All right, folks. Peace, peace, peace. It is the guy with the bow tie checking in with you live for another edition of Business with Benefits. Sorry about the late start. The technology on Canva and different things does not want to work with me today, so we're going to make it work. To my right, you will see Mr. Floyd. How you doing, King?
Doing well. I appreciate you.
No problem. Thanks for coming. We got the East Coast connection here with Georgia on my end and Florida on your end, the Georgia-Florida line, as it were. Want to say thank you to hashtag Team Live, hashtag Team Replay. However you consume the content, we appreciate it. Please let us know in the comments below as I do my little YouTube fingers. And Floyd and I met through comments and interactions online. He's been supportive of the content. I've seen his content as well. But for people that don't know you, Floyd, kind of let them know who you are and what you do.
All right, absolutely. So again, my name is Floyd Sturdifen. I am the performance coach that helps people mind their gaps. And so what that really means is I'm looking to work with individuals in their personal and professional lives and help you get from where you are now to where you want to be. And that could be in the form of goals or even achievements of sorts. One way that we do that is through, or one way that I do that is through my company, 3P Journeys, where I'm the co-founder and president. And so what we really try to do is to get people to find their passion and let their passion fuel their purpose. And then the purpose drives their performance to get you where you want to go and be the best that you can be in this game we call life.
Awesome. Doing too many things at one time. Sorry about that, Floyd. So right. Did you start in the coaching space first or in the human resources space first?
So human resources came first.
Okay.
And it morphed. I think with coaching, well, formally, human resources came first. I've always been a coach of sorts at heart, growing up and all through life leading up to now. But within the last few years, I decided to go ahead and make this a formal thing for my own business and really go out there and put myself out there and use the talents that I have to help people achieve their greatness.
All right, so you get to put your own things you've done for yourself into action, which is important, I think, for a coach to actually have been where people are going. So your clientele right now, would you say it's mostly the gaps you're seeing are in the employee side or the entrepreneur side?
Yeah, so employee side, as an employee right now is the biggest one, especially with COVID and the way it's affecting all of us really in the job market. And even with setbacks in the job market, I'm finding that people are looking to take advantage of things that previously may not have been high on the priority list. Mm-hmm. And now they have this downtime, they're looking back and you get to see it's kind of perspective of what really matters, when you don't have the hustle and bustle of the job to occupy your mind space.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it starts with the job, but it's also in the personal life too. So there are still folks who are doing things, starting their own business, purchasing houses and being able to, they want to be the most efficient they can and do it right the first time. And so with folks in that aspect as well.
So let's break that down. So we led up to this in the story and the post and everything about gaps in your personal life and professional life. So what is the gap you're referring to when you say people have gaps?
Absolutely. So the gap is really, it's not a negative thing. Typically when I talk to people, they think it's going to be negative, but it's not solely negative. It can be, but it's not. So that whole minding the gap, for those who don't know, it came from London. They have the tube over there and they have this, which is a subway, for those who don't know. And when the train comes in, there's that gap between the platform and the train. And so they always say, mind your gap, because if you not paying attention, you step down in between, it's not going to be a nice day. And so that's kind of where that came from. But what it really means for me in this aspect is that if you are trying to achieve something, it could be a habit, it could be trying to get promoted, it could be leveling up in your own personal life in some form or fashion. You may or may not have all the tools in your skill box to be able to do that. And so what I like to do is come in and help you with that and figure out exactly what is it. First of all, you got to know exactly what is it that you're trying to achieve. Mm-hmm. And then look and see, do you have the right tools currently to be able to do that? And if you do, and you start down that journey, then what I'm really looking for is, are there things, pitfalls, shortcomings, things that may slow you down, hinder you, or even just derail you altogether? You navigate those waters. But at the same time, there are going to be things that you can use to leverage or take advantage of you to help speed up the process, make it more efficient and make you more likely to be successful. And so I'm looking at both of those, I think, are important when it comes to minding the gap in your own personal and professional life.
So the thing to kind of start this out, and audience, I want you to chime in with this too, is you hear something that makes sense for you, kind of throw it in the comments. the identifying the gap. I mean, because they always talk about awareness is the first key for change and all that. So how does somebody actually identify, let's say professional first, how do they identify their professional gap if they're looking at that?
Right. So there are some steps when it comes to identifying the gaps. And the one thing that I always say is that when you start this process, it's very important that you are brutally honest, but lovingly honest with yourself, and decide to go through with a coach as well to let them know as well, because we can only help you as much as you allow us to help you, and as honest really as you are with yourself. So first, it starts off with knowing where you want to go, knowing what it is you want to do, what's the goal, what's the objective, and then once you identify that and you lock it in, then it's how do you get there? Is there a path that's already established? Is it one that it's the road that's never been traveled and you're going to be bulldozing your way through and figuring that out? You need to kind of have an idea so that you can map out a path. And then what I like to say is check your plus and minuses. And this is really take an inventory of your skill set, your skills, your knowledge, your abilities to be able to do this perceived task. And so the pluses are things that you already have. The negatives are things that maybe you are deficient in, or you want to beef up so that you can use those tools as you move forward. And then once you do that, the next step I always say is looking at your minuses and finding out what areas will bring you the most return on value, your ROI. Right.
So when you say pluses and minuses, I want to dig into that more. Like, are you it's kind of like strengths and weaknesses in essence, or is it like a more of an analytical way?
Yeah, it's definitely like plus. So the pluses are the strengths, and the minus, I say weaknesses, but weaknesses to me, I don't like that term necessarily.
Yeah,
I understand where it comes from, but the minus is just, there's something that right now you don't have, and it could be taken away from your success in the journey. That's why I like the plus and minus aspect of it. But it is definitely something that you want to address, and not all the time is a weakness or a minus really even worthy of your attention. So it really depends the perspective of your journey that you're taking to get to your goal or success or whatever that is for you. Is it something that's worth spending time on? Because if you can get by with that, and maybe later on down the line you can go back and shore that up, then don't spend the time up front and let it derail you and hold you back from the greatness that you're meant to achieve.
So you sound like you kind of focus from the school of thought, like of the Franklin Covey kind of method of just look what are the most important things, not so much everything. I mean, I think about my world. Sometimes administrative tasks aren't necessarily something that moves me to the next level, but I find myself looking like, I need to get better at that, which I do. But at the end of the day, it's not moving the ball across the court. And speaking of movement, I want to make sure we can bring the audience in here. We have Brian Carter said LinkedIn. Thanks for jumping in, Brian.
Brian,
Rosalind Krieger up there in Toronto said, love that, Floyd. She represents from Team Live in Toronto, and she liked that you said, lovingly honest. I'm stealing that.
Hey, you have to. You have to.
Be a master thief. Nothing wrong with that. And let us know in the comments, guys, if you identified your professional gaps. Because for you, as being the coach, did you have to do that for yourself first before you got into coaching, or did somebody tell you like, hey, Floyd, you're messing up on these things?
Yeah, so it's a bit of both, if I'm honest. So it is self-reflection. It is looking and going and kind of beating your head as you're going through. And so at some point, hopefully, for me, it was, okay, I'm going down this path. I am been successful. I haven't achieved in some areas as fast as I wanted to grow. Yeah. And so I can continue down the path of working and beating down the walls, or I can learn from somebody else's mistakes who maybe have been down that path already. Yes. And so it's a bit of both. Some of it is learning on your own, but not all the time do you have to learn on your own and kind of utilize time. There's a better use of or better way to spend your time to be more effective.
This is why I love books and podcasts, because you can hear from somebody else's mistakes and figure, I'm not going to do that. And it is applying the knowledge is the hard part. But that's what the next part of this is. Like once you identify those gaps, or you get that knowledge from that book or that podcast, you're in a coaching position and you're also in human resources. So what do you find is the most challenging thing once you identify, hey, this is the issue? What do you find is the most challenging thing for you as a coach to get people to make change or make action with that?
So the hardest thing, but usually brings the biggest opportunity for learning and growth, is going to be recognition. Having that other individual that I'm working with really understand and recognize and admit that this is an area that could be holding me back. And it's not necessarily that they're wrong or it's a bad thing, but maybe you're just not seeing it in the right perspective. And so the approach that you're going at this particular issue or whatever is holding you back, we'll say, if you just make a small adjustment, a small pivot, that could make the difference. It could be the difference between, for example, getting promoted. So here's a great example. We had an individual that I was working with a little while ago, and they had a hairstyle that they liked. I'm gonna go this route. And the hairstyle they had it was nothing wrong with it on the personal level. However, they were working in a position where it was highly professional, and it came with a certain expectation of appearance.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm not saying that I agree with this. This is just an example. And so for this individual, it was a struggle, a real struggle for them of whether or not you adjust the hairstyle to fit in.
Mm-hmm.
You go down you go the opposite route, and you continue down and you change the perspective. Now, one is going to lead you to promotion and opportunities a little bit faster than the other one. The other one, you can still get there. You may have to wait for some of the changing of the guard and the mindset that is in that environment. But it really comes down to what is the energy that you want to put into it, and really how important is it to get to that destination. And so that's
an interesting question, though. When you mention that's kind of the clashing of the professional gap and the personal gap, isn't it? Because I mean, maybe that's their personal thing that they're like, hey, that's just me, but it's clashing. Mm-hmm. So I mean, how do you help, especially with COVID? We're kind of in a different situation now, where I saw earlier that the best time to call prospects now has changed to like earlier in the morning, just because people are working from home and their kids aren't doing something. So how do you kind of walk that line of like the professional gap versus the personal gap and help people separate the two if that's possible?
Yeah, so I think, well, first of all, for me, the personal and professional life are one and the same. They're intertwined, right? So as much as we try to separate them, one affects the other. So if I'm having issues in my personal life, that is going to bleed over into the professional life, and same vice versa. Going back. So it's understanding that one, it's kind of that yin yang of it all. So it's going to affect one, and you want to recognize and use those, turn it into a leverage. Don't separate them as though are weaknesses. Right? Mm. And so in this particular case, even in the HR space, it's having that honest conversation again, what I was talking about before, that tough but loving, honest conversation with yourself, where it becomes down to the values that you hold. What really is important to you. If this is an area that you're willing to give some room on, and that goal is really important to you, then you have to make that. But whatever the decision is, it needs to be something that you can live with, and that you're not. I would say that you're not going to sacrifice personal integrity or even credibility, for that matter, in your decision making. So it's a bit of, is it really worth it, and what are you giving up or gaining as a result of getting that goal?
Yeah, it sounds like more like a seesaw mentality than when they say this whole work-life balance thing. I feel like that's kind of an overused term, but not really possible. So you basically kind of say, what are you willing to give up a little bit just to reach what you want? So I think that's a good mindset for that. And catch up with the audience real quick. We had Donovan Smith with the Post Meridian. He said hi. He's talking to Randy in the comments here. Rosalind said, yes, we can help them see it with the mistakes that people have. And then Randy's jumping in here. Randy's a silly. We're great. We're talking here with the bald head. Well, Randy, I haven't seen you in a while. Maybe COVID-19, you grew your hair out. So let us know if you grew your hair out. And then Marlon said, what's up, peeps, out there in New Jersey?
What's going on, Marlon?
So when the personal life, you mentioned they both kind of bleed into each other. So as the coach, they're coming to you for professional reasons initially. Where do you start? Do you start with the personal gap first or the professional gap, or does it even matter which one comes first?
It doesn't. For me, it doesn't. But really, when it comes down to that, when you're with a client or someone, we're just having a conversation. For me personally, I take care to make sure that I'm not leading them down a path they don't want to go. So I'm listening. Where is it that you want to go? And let's go address that. Now, along that journey, there's opportunities to shine light on other areas in their lives or situations that they can, then look. And so perfect example of this is a lot of times I get people come to me, and I do resume writing as well. And so one of the things that happens is, hey, Floyd, I want to come in. I need to get a stellar resume, I call it. And that's all good and fine. I understand that that's what you want, because the end goal is you want to move on, or you want to get a position or a job employment of some sorts. Along with that, in order to be able to get to that point where you can put all of that information onto the paper and then be able to sell it when you go for an interview, You have to prepare the inside. So the mindset, the way that they're thinking, the way they're approaching has to be dealt with as well. And so in order to get through that, sometimes I have to actually go back with them and talk and figure out and help them figure out, who are you? I know what the paper says, but who are you? What do you stand for? What is it that you want? And they have to understand that they have to have that understanding, first of all, so that they can then project what it is they want and go and really find out what it is they want. So when it comes to the personal professional, it's again, just,
Well, with that said, I mean, when you think about that, do you see that? I mean, because resume writing is definitely I wouldn't say a buzzword, but it's definitely popular. Would you say that that's often not even the real issue? Is more so getting clarity before the resume? Because I feel like when I was looking for jobs back before I started my insurance business, I just worked in the resume, and I didn't have anything like to say, what do I really want to do? So, I mean, would you say that when people call you for the resume writing, it's really more important to work on their objectives first, and then the resume comes as a byproduct?
Yeah. So it's like this. Another example is if somebody is say teenager. I have a teenager, right? And right now, my son, he is working towards getting his driver's license. His goal is a driver's license. So he may come to me and say, Dad, I want to have a driver's license. That's great. I can't just hand him that driver's license.
Right.
You got to back up and go through driver's training. You got to get your learners. So there's things that have to happen before. And so what I mean by that, when people come in for the resume, that's always the end product, but there's some work that needs to be done before then to get to that end product. And what they think is the end product, this, talking about the resume, is not really the end product. It's a step towards the end, which is really to get a job or promotion, right? So for me, my approach is rarely do I really enter into an agreement with someone about resume writing with the end of it just being the resume, because I know it takes more than just a piece of paper to get them to the goal, beyond that. And so I like to have that holistic view of it of, okay, this is what you want. Let's figure out and make sure that you know what you have and what you bring to the table so that you can put on paper and that can work for you to get you to the ultimate goal.
Yeah. Speaking of which, for more than a piece of paper, my normal bow tie nation thing is acting weird because Canva wants to crash today. But I promise that we give a shout out real quick to the bow tie nation with Mr. Brian Carter. Go check him out there on LinkedIn. Brian Carter representing for the bow tie nation. He's represented today, so make sure you follow him and check out his content. Good dude, and he's been a supporter of the show for a while. So thank you, Brian, for everything you're doing. I will get a proper rendition once the Canva wants to work with me. It's been an issue all day. But switching gears real quick, you're in Florida, and we talked about this a little bit offline. Was Disney just laying off 25 or 20 something thousand people?
Right.
A lot of them will be looking at their resume, but
yeah.
And unfortunately, it's probably the wrong mindset. I mean, because if you're working at hospitality, they're going to try to stay in hospitality, and you're in a state that's heavily hospitality. So for those people that are in like an industry like that come to you and say, hey, Floyd, I want to get into a different industry, but make my task look more manageable to something else. Is that kind of looking at their skill set first as a resume writer, or are you looking at what is it you really want to do? Because I know this isn't the end all be all for you.
Yep. So it's a bit of both, but it starts with, for me, what is it that you really want to do? And a lot of times it happens, they come and they say, I'm in hospitality or I'm in some other industry, but I want to jump and I want to transition to something else. And then I'll say, okay, so what are you thinking about? And then they'll name 3 or 4 different areas that they've worked in the past or that they have interest in. And that's all well and fine. But when it comes to the resume, it's something that you should take a sniper attack where it's pointed towards something versus and where it's a wide range, you're just putting it out there, which I definitely do not support at all. I think it should be targeted. And so when it comes to, switching gears, it's really looking at transferable skills. But before, again, I know it's kind of a repeat thing. Before I can get them to understand those transferable skills, they have to know what it is they bring to the table. What skills do they have? And a lot of time, again, working with that mindset to get them to see that, okay, yes, you're doing hospitality now, and let's say you want to jump into banking. What are some skills, some denominators between those 2 industries that we can tap into and show some of the experiences that you've had previous success with that are going to be indicated of previous success in the future, or at least the ability to have success.
And I'm maybe thinking about something too as we're going through that transition. Is there a way for people, at least on a resume? I know in social media you can show up your personal, maybe not gaps, but your pluses on your personal side on social media. But is there some way for people that are in that situation that says, hey, I want to go into banking from hospitality. I'm a really good person, but that doesn't, how do you translate that for people that are watching this or looking for jobs or switching roles? How do you translate that personal side into that piece of paper, or is there even a way to do that?
So I'm gonna ask you to clarify because you glitched on me a little bit, so I didn't
Oh,
catch
sorry
part
about
of
that.
that.
Okay. Is there a way to like basically take those personal things, because a resume is a static piece of paper? Is there some way to take those personal things and make them shine on the resume to help them get that shot?
Yeah, so there are things that you can do. First, it starts with once let's say you're looking to switch industries, you have to identify what position that you're best fit for, you think you're best fit for. And then one of the things I always like to do is have the individual go out and find a position that you think you're suited for or interested in. And let's look at what that job description or the posting is telling you about that position. And then we're going to take that and break it down and look at the skills or experiences that you've had in the past or currently, whatever the case may be, and see if we can draw the lines, connect the dots between the two. And so that's a process of mining their experiences and turning over their mind as far as older experiences and bringing back up and having discussions surrounding that and really critically looking at it and thinking about, okay, is there actual correlation between these two things? And if there is, how do I package that and then package it and then showcase it to the prospective employer on the other end in a way that they get what I'm saying and it makes sense. And it's not, fraudulent or anything. We're not business, trying to draw it up. It needs to be actual things that you're connecting those dots.
Yeah, I know back in the day, the resume, you would just stretch it out, but now people can kind of figure out what you know from references and social media. And then Marlon added on there, always about trade-offs, and I fully agreed, Floyd, regarding personal and professional bleeding into one another. Mm-hmm. And then Rosalind said, preach. And then we have Miss Harlene Vasquez. She gave it the fire symbol. So thank you for that, Harlene, or Harleni. Let me know if I said that right. I butcher people's names sometimes. So we talked about the career trajectory. This is the career trajectory. Do you find that?
Just a second.
Go ahead.
You said something that I wanted to go back and talk about.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Before you had mentioned, we were talking about the buzzword of work-life balance. Right. Yeah. And so that's kind of overused, and I agree, it is overused. But one of the things I always try to say when I hear that is we have it just backwards and saying it that way. It's not work-life balance; it's life-work balance, because we're here to live first. That has to be, yes, we need money, we got to pay the bills and that sort of thing. But our real objective here is to live and live a life abundantly. And one of the ways we do that is through work. So it really shouldn't be the work-life balance; it's life-work balance.
Ooh, that's a t-shirt right there. Throw some reactions to that, people. That's a t-shirt right there. Because that's when I look at it now, like my kids are in the backyard playing while I'm going live with you, and then I'll get an email for a quote at the same time. It's like life is still happening and the work's coming into it. And I think that's the way it kind of should be, especially in this current environment with COVID. We have to kind of deal with what we have to deal with. So people are working from home where it's life all the time, where you're not really leaving to go to work. So with that being said, we talked about the career trajectory of like coaching people through those gaps. What would you say is like for the entrepreneur? Because with that, there's no structure for the most part. So how do you help that individual identify their gaps when they're in a borderless environment?
Yeah, so it's really looking at, and this is something that I had to do for myself, heavily had to do. And I do not recommend taking this journey on your own. It can be done, but there's a lot of pitfalls and a lot of things that can set you back and get you discouraged and make you not want to go down that path if you don't get right in the beginning. And so really looking at, again, going back, and it's very similar to the other stuff. It's really looking and seeing, checking your pluses and minuses. If you're going to be an entrepreneur, then you really have to have that drive on the inside, that fire on the inside, that you don't need anybody else to really keep flaming for you, because it's going to be your business, your drive that's going to propel this thing forward. And then once you do that, you want to really look at it and see, is whatever it is you're thinking about going into business for, is there a need for it? Is there going to be clients on the other end? Otherwise, as the saying goes, it's just a hobby, right? And so you make sure that there's a need there for it, that you have that drive, and then you're going to look and see, okay, well, if I'm going to do this, if I'm going to go into this endeavor, what are some things I need to know? What are some skills? And if it's in a totally new industry where this hasn't even been thought of yet, and you have this vision and you want to go there, that's totally fine. But you need to look and say, okay, if this has a chance of being successful, are there some parallel industries or businesses that are out there that I can pull some different lessons from, or things that they're doing well, and I might be able to infuse that into what I'm doing here to propel. So it's really looking at and taking inventory of what the situation is, and then are there barriers? And if there's going to be some barriers out there, how do I knock them down? Is it something that I can accomplish on my own, or do I need to partner with somebody else, or work with an organization to help, get over that gap?
You're leading into the dreaded A word, the accountability word. Nobody likes accountability, but they do. I mean, at the end of the day, we always hear this story of become your own boss so that you never have anybody to answer to. And we peddled this image and idea of that. But at the end of the day, you kind of said you don't want to do this alone. So accountability, let's talk about that, because we're in a different situation now. Your boss isn't breathing over your neck. Right. You only have like an email or a Slack notification or text or something. There's no real personal, physical accountability. So how important is it for the professional side and the personal side to have accountability to actually reach the goal? Because some people think I could do it by myself. So how important do you think accountability is in that piece of changing and closing the gap?
It's critical. It's almost everything. And it's very important. So what I mean by that is that if you're not accountable, if you're not going to hold yourself accountable, it's never going to happen. Procrastination will always be your best friend in that way. You'll find yourself with procrastination. So that brings me to the next point. That is one aspect. If you want to be an entrepreneur, or if you just want to make a step, I always say that there's information out there for everything that you want to do in life, almost on the internet. Thanks to the internet, everything is accessible. You have to be able to connect the dots, and you have to be able to hold yourself accountable. And then, so if you can do that on a good scale, then maybe doing it on your own is the way to go. And so the example I say and this is, if you find that you know in yourself, in your heart of hearts, that you are not going to hold yourself accountable, don't waste your time. Find somebody. It could be a coach, it could be a mentor, whatever the case is, but find somebody that's going to help hold you accountable. And so one of the things I always say is that if you can build a rocket, there's enough information online that you can build a rocket and shoot yourself off the ground. It doesn't mean you should do it. Right. It's safe. Right. So you have to weigh the risks associated with it. And even if you do build a rocket that is successful, how long is it going to take you? Versus teaming up with somebody else, a rocket scientist or whatever the case may be, who's done it, knows the science behind it, the ins and outs, the pitfalls, and can help steer you in a way that you're able to do it that's safe. And then you can have a successful launch. And so it's weighing of the two. Can you do it on your own? How long is it going to take? What's the risks associated with it? And then if it's too great of a cost, find somebody to help you do it.
Yeah, this is where my wife probably would slap me, because I'm one of those hold on to it kind of people with stuff, like to get it, just I can do it because of the internet. The reason I'm kind of like that, I think, because there is so much information that I can go fix that. I can go do that. I can do that because I can just Google it. I've fixed many things in my house because of YouTube University. But at the same time, then you mentioned that is it worth the time and all that? I end up spending more time on something I should, because I'm like, I can YouTube that. I can figure it out. And sometimes it works out great. Sometimes it doesn't. But I think that's the issue a lot of people have. And then Rosalind said, get a buddy. I have 2 accountability buddies.
Absolutely.
And she said she avoided accountability for years, for a long time. And Donovan added to that good information.
But I find when you're ready to move forward, accountability, and and the time has come for you to go ahead and do that thing. If you have not held yourself accountable in the past, don't waste any more time. Find somebody that can help you out in that area.
That's if it's important to you enough, though. I think kind of to that point, if it's important enough, you're saying that go find someone if you just can't do it yourself. And Edward said, great discussion. Thank you, King Edward, out there representing.
Appreciate it.
So with that, I mean, we're going through election times right now, and accountability is a big topic, obviously, lately. And I know that wasn't the original purpose of our conversation, but there's a gap in accountability. It seems like that's probably one of the biggest gaps with anything you want to do. I mean, if you want to lose weight, you want to, go eat healthier, all those things kind of tie back to accountability. So for you as the coach, that's also in the HR space, how do you navigate that line of, you mentioned that loving yourself, giving that loving critique of yourself. How do you walk that line as the coach to basically have the accountability and be firm, but still be loving at the same time for that person to not feel disenfranchised or disrespected because of the accountability? Right.
So that's a conversation that we have right up front. In that first conversation where we're having a discussion and we're feeling each other out. And one thing I always say is that if I'm going to commit my time and resources to you, I need the same investment and not only in yourself, but to me as well. So it's a respect of going back and forth. Once you have that, then it's okay. Now that there's that understanding, as your coach for this specific item that we're working on together, I'm going to hold you accountable, because the end goal and one of the reasons why you're coming to me is because you want to make sure you're successful on the back end of it. And so that's my job, to look at you and guide you in the right way, but also to say, hey, if you're not meeting the marks or you're wasting your time, then we have to figure out, work together, what are some penalties or what are some things that we can do. It could be anything from, hey, you need to make sure that you're doing this XYZ time, or send me a text and let me know how you're doing, and if you're not meeting that goal and it's not going well, let me know, so I can then chime in, give you some positivity, so we can talk about what's holding you back from meeting that goal or that next step in the process.
Yeah.
And it just progressed from there. But it's really having, again, that honest, loving conversation that puts us on the same path. So I'm here for you to help you succeed. Your success is my success, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And part of that is holding you accountable. Same thing. If you're paying me money to help you, you're going to hold me accountable and make sure that
right.
And so I look at it, and the flip side is, I'm not giving you money, but I'm giving you my time, which I can never get back, and the resources of experiences and lessons learned from the past to make you a better person. So it's really mutual respect, and one that from my end is really just wanting to see you be successful and reach the potential of full potential that you're here. You were put here.
Yeah, I find that fascinating, just because when I think about, and I didn't mean to cut you off, apologize for that. It's just fascinating, the whole, where does that leave us? Because you're a parent, I'm a parent. There's a phase of life that accountability is like everything. Like, your kids have to have, hey, tell me what you did. Where's your report card? There's this heavy accountability piece. And then somewhere it just goes away, and then people just don't like to answer to anybody. So I don't know if that's college or high school, but as a parent and a coach and an HR professional, where do you think we lose accountability, and what's the way to kind of help people that are trying to help refoster themselves? Like, what makes it go away, you think?
Man, I love this question. So I really do. So one of the things I always say when I'm working with especially new leaders or supervisors is, and if they're parents, is that personal and professional, it always goes together, right? So when it comes to new supervisors and parents, if you're doing it right, in my opinion, a lot of the theories and practices that you use they're gonna be parallel to each other. You're just adjusting it to the person. And so, like yourself, for both of us, we have more than one child. So the approach that I take with one child does not mean it's going to work with the other child. They're a totally different person.
Yes.
It's a different approach. And so if you would drive yourself crazy, I have gray hair now from trying this. This is a lesson learned. Yeah. So, you have to understand that everything is not a one size fits all type process.
Mm-hmm.
But going back to accountability, how does that go? One of the things that we focus on, my wife and I, is that, especially with me, I've really had to look at this, because for my parents, they did a great job, phenomenal job. But one of the things that I struggled with was when I moved out was, okay, it's on my own now,
Yeah.
For me, I left the house and went into the military. So I still had some level of structure there.
Right.
But separation from the military to civilian life, that was a huge struggle for me.
Right.
It was a huge struggle. And so I had to do all these things that I talked about, sit myself down, really look at where is it I'm trying to go, map out a plan. What do I have that's going to make me successful? And what do I need to increase my skill set or knowledge on to help me get there? And then really knowing that no one is going to hold me accountable in this journey but me. And so any success or failures I have, it rests on my shoulders. So that made it real for me. On the flip side of that, very quickly, is that when it comes to my children, I'm now looking at it and saying, okay, I need to prepare them for life on their own and hold themselves accountable. And that's the same thing as a supervisor. When you get somebody that's new to the position, you want to work them up and teach and coach them up to the point where they can do their job independently. And if you're really good, then you're going to help them not only be good at their current job, but set them up for success, depending on what their goals and desires are. And so for my kids, it's really, even now, I have two in high school,
mm-hmm.
and one that just started middle school. But even with the middle school child, it's okay, you can do this, but this is going to be the result of it. Or, and like I said before, looking and using other people's experiences. With the youngest child, I'll say, hey, look, with your oldest sibling, your brother, he tried this path. It didn't necessarily work out. You have the option of following his footsteps or following your own path and to try and get a different way and seeing how that comes out. So it's a bit of give and take. There's no one way that fits all, but like I said, but it's really just putting some thought into it. I think that's probably the best thing that sums up is thinking about it beforehand. And you know, if I want them to be more independent and hold themselves accountable, then I'm going to try to my best to set them up and put them in a situation or give them examples or lead them down a path that will allow them to acquire the accountability skills they need to succeed in life. That's the long version. Hopefully I tried to pair it.
That was good. No, and I think the thing I heard kind of the theme throughout the whole process is almost this sort of time traveling that looking at if I'm supervising, I want you to be at this place in 5 years. If I'm a parent, I want you to be at this place in 5 years. So that might be the part where we lose it probably because once you're on your own, nobody's doing that. I mean, the military, I'm a military brat. My dad was still in the Army, basically. He's retired, but doing the same job. He's always had, you know, since he was 18, that military structure. So me going into college and everything, when I got done, I was like, now what? You know, it's like I didn't know what to do at that point. I've been, you know, moving around the military, then going to college, and it's like, oh, I got to get a job and do this and that. I wasn't totally floundering, but I didn't have that look ahead 10 years thing. And that's kind of where some of the struggles come with supervising and children and all that. So I think that's a good point. And just to make sure the audience gets, they gave their time to put comments in here. My queen's mother said, good pointers. Thank you, Mr. Bowtie, for keeping up the good work you're accomplishing. Thank you, G-Mom. And then Jamila said, so true, a system of accountability is crucial.
It is.
And Edward had a good little comment here. A lot of times I think it's college because the students are trying to learn their own way and parents are trying to give them space to find their way. So Edward has said it, the college system is destroying accountability in the world. So colleges, boo. And then the last thing real quick, Rosalind said, Floyd, can you adopt me?
Hey, put in the visa paperwork and we'll see what we can make happen.
There we go. So Floyd, very interesting conversation because I think accountability, we didn't start that place, but that's a gap. I think that's apparent whenever you're coaching anybody is that this is the gap we have to identify and make it happen. So for people that want to work with you, like what is your typical clientele? Is it small businesses, you know, W-2 people? What's your typical criteria?
Yeah, so on the individual side, it's anyone. Typically, I find that somewhere between the late 20s to 60s are the folks that I typically deal with. But it's folks that are tired of being where they are and they want to do better in some aspect. And so they understand that a little bit of accountability or using someone else's experience to help them get there is something that's worth it. On the flip side, when it comes to businesses, it's usually small to mid-sized businesses in the areas of developing HR or practices or like training, compliance, working with their workforce to help get them up to speed in a certain area that they have identified. And then, so, I mean, that's generally the piece. I think going back to the individual side, what I most look for to be better and the willingness to open yourself up that goes successfully, because I never want anyone, I never push my services and I never want anyone to waste their money with me. And so that's kind of the thing I look for in it. And it has to be a fit. You have to be a fit. No matter if you go with me or anybody else, you need to make sure that you know where you want to go and you're compatible. So.
I knew you and I get along because that's the same way when my wife and I vent about the work I do with mentoring insurance agents. That's the biggest thing I look for is like, do you want to do better? Because I'm not dragging you kicking and screaming to do the stuff I can tell you that'll work. If you don't want to do it, I don't want to work with you essentially. So I knew we'd get along in that regard. And where can people go to find out more information about you?
Yeah, so you can find me here on LinkedIn, Floyd Sturdifen. You can find me on Facebook, Floyd Sturdifen as well, IG, Instagram. It's at 3P Journeys LLC. Also, you can reach me through our website, which is www.3pjourneys.com, or my landing page, which is floydsturdifen.com. All of these different methods will get you to me or someone that can get you to me.
And there's the other webpage too for you guys to copy down on Team Live or Team Replay. Make sure you check it out because I mean the thing about this, I've had different coaches on here before, and the important thing with coaches is having that right fit. But like you said, I mean, if it's the right fit, it's the right fit. So as a East Coast guy, at least if you're in the East Coast, when Floyd calls you for accountability, it'll be the same time zone. So you won't have to worry about him calling you 6 a.m. or something if you're in the West Coast. But if you want that, you want that. But last thing, I want to make sure we everybody in the U.S. and abroad saw we had the first debate last night, so it is voting season. Voting's already happening. I'm in Georgia. Early voting starts October 12th. I think Florida's about the same time, right? Or did Florida start already? Florida started already, I think. Well, either way, October 12th for Georgia. Those of you here in Georgia, please, please, please go out and vote. Don't be angry. Go vote. And if you're scared of the post office, which I understand, go in person and vote in person with the early ballots. I'm going to talk about this every day till November 3rd. So if you're tired of me talking about it, next time we go live, comment I voted so you can ignore me for the last 30 seconds of the show. But we appreciate you guys. Please be safe, wash your hands, and stay tuned for everything we have going on. We will catch you next time on Business.